Alright, so it's early in the morning, and I'm gonna talk kind of quietly because I don't want to wake up a bunch of people. But I woke up this morning and I thought, today's the day to start inner engineering online. Razzly dazzly do. It is now 6 months later, and I am here to share this video with you. Rhymes. Alright. I waited until now to create this video because I wanted to make sure that I had really digested the learnings of this course before trying to go out and talk about it. Inner Engineering Online is a 7-session online video lecture course, and pretty much how this video is going to work is that I took videos 6 months ago after every session where I just kind of talked about what I was going through, how the session hit me, and kind of my initial takeaways. So I'm going to show you all of those 7 pieces, and then at the end, present me will come back and talk about the things that have changed within me over the last 6 months since taking this course. So, without further ado, I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you at the end. I haven't started yet, and coming into it, I have a few doubts potentially, just because I read his inner engineering book, Yogi's Guide to Joy, and in that book I thought it was a lot of really good discussions he had and a lot of really good ways that he went more in depth about the things that you see him talk about online, but I didn't necessarily get any big practices out of the book. It left me with a few inspirations of how I could kind of do practices differently, but it didn't give me any of those direct tools. So I'm wondering if Inner Engineering Online is going to do a similar thing where it just goes really in depth about a lot of the things he talks about, or if it's going to bring a whole toolkit with it, which would be really exciting. I mean, that's what I'm really looking for, is to go deeper into these practices. I do the Isha Kriya daily, and I have, at one point in my life, I did it for like 3 months straight, and now I've been doing it for about the same amount of time every morning. So I'm wondering if this will kind of give me a more in-depth version of that practice, which I would really love to see. But yeah, they say to not take notes or anything, not have any sort of distractions, just to watch the session as if it was a live session that you're at. So I'm going to try to do exactly that and just sit here for an hour and a half, no distractions, each time I watch an episode. Alright, so I just finished up the first session of Inner Engineering Online, and it was pretty much just about the why and what inner engineering even means. If you listen to a lot of Sadhguru, like I have over the years and continue to do, he used a lot of similar examples, a lot of the same examples that you'll hear him say in different talks and such. But then he strings it all together in a way that's pretty neat to hear. We have such a complex machine here that we've never really thought about how to use and never been taught how to use. Instead, we've spent our whole time, rather than increasing the ability of this machine and the ability of our perception, our schooling has often taught us just to try to memorize things and store it all in the intellect, which then how much of that have you actually applied throughout your life? So his whole kind of theory behind this seems to be, if we can increase what this machine can do and the ability that it can work at, then no matter what situation you're in, you're going to be doing your absolute best. And pretty much the whole idea of this first section was to say, look, this machine is what we need to learn to take care of, so we're going to start doing that. This one definitely felt pretty long, but just sitting there for an hour and a half and just listening to something, how often do we do that these days? So I'm really excited to see how I adjust throughout the different sessions. But yeah, I'll see you guys after the next session.
Yasya brahmani ramate chitta.
So I just finished up day 2 of Inner Engineering Online, and let me tell you, it was amazing. packed with wonderful ideas. The second section here is overall about the idea of desire. Pretty much he runs through this whole idea of desire and really analyzes what is desire, where does it come from, how have spiritual practices in the past dealt with desire, why are those not necessarily fulfilling nowadays and people are having a really tough time sticking to those, and how can we go about it now in this time in a way that allows us to deal with our desires in a correct way, and not only to deal with them, but to understand that desires are actually the root of life. Just a fascinating lecture by Sadhguru, and a really interesting meditation at the end too, which got into a bit more breath work and a lot of visualization work. So yeah, as of day 2, I would already say it's very much worth the investment. I was expecting that some real stuff would come out because it's Sadhguru and the dude's just on it, but pleasantly surprised. But I'll see you guys in the day 3 reflection. Much love.
Yasya brahmani ramate chitta.
Zippity woo wah. Session 3 was just fantastic. We got into the ideas, Sadhguru got into the ideas of what it means to be fully alive. And again, it was a few of the things you hear him say in different talks, but combined with all of this content in between it, that makes everything far more clear that you hear pieces of in these other talks. I mean, really the biggest topic was the idea of responsibility, and we hear him talk about this all the time in different discussions he's in, where he redefines responsibility, rather than responsibility, the person who is responsible being the one who is to blame. We say instead that responsibility is the ability to respond, which is a beautiful thing, whereas blame is obviously not a beautiful thing. Take responsibility to be the ability to respond. You are noticing that everything in life is constantly responding. Our bodies, our chemical makeup completely changes when the sun comes up or when the sun goes down. Without us even thinking about it, we are always responding. Our ears, eyes, all of our senses, always responding to everything around us. We are breathing air that is a response to the air outside of us and our lungs. And if we are able to dive into that ability to respond, that is where true freedom comes from. Because being fully responsible is to be in line with life, to be in line with creation itself. Whereas to place blame is the exact opposite of that, because when you place blame on something else, you are saying, I am no longer a part of this thing going on. So that was definitely the biggest lesson I took. Yeah, it's definitely worth the investment to do this course. But we're going to keep going through each session to just see what happens and give you guys a better idea of what you're investing in. But so far, yeah, I'm convinced. All right. See you in the next one.
Nandati nandati nandate va.
I'm back. Session 4. It's dark outside because it's rainy. And I look like I just woke up. But it's because I did just wake up. Sadhguru just hit me with some bombs. I think the real power in all of it is not that he's saying, here's A, B, C, how you do it. Instead, he's saying, here's what you need to do. Now it is your choice how you experience that. And I think a lot of people are looking for quick fixes. That's really kind of the thing where we get into the whole religious movement and being like, hey, you can pay your way to heaven. Sadhguru doesn't say anything of the sort, but he does lay out, look, these are the things that you need to work on, or that, in my experience, if you work on them, it will lead to a happy life. This whole session was about the idea of the present moment, and it really got into the details of that moment and the details of happiness and kind of thinking about the way that happiness functions. I really love the way that Sadhguru often breaks down a certain topic like this. Like, he'll take a certain word, this concept that you've never really thought about in depth, and then makes it very simple to move through, and almost like opens up the mechanics of this emotion or this idea that's kind of just always been sitting there, like happiness. It sounds like this kind of strange thing, but then he breaks it down very simply, which was beautiful. Really, really good session. I don't want to say much more because I feel like it would be a disservice to the course. Definitely things that I needed to hear and we all need to hear. So, loving it. On to session 5.
Yugurtova Bhogartova.
Let me say this. It's seeming to me that this entire inner engineering program is a similar experience to watching a really good series of movies or reading a really good series of books. Because at the beginning, you hear all these things that are very relatable to your life, and you start to get to know these characters, in this case, these concepts, and you're like, okay, this is all cool. At that beginning portion, you're not like fully gripped yet. You know, you're gripped in the sense of I'm interested, but you haven't had any sort of big experience with the thing. But then as the story moves on, as this inner engineering course moves on, all of a sudden these other concepts, these other characters come into the playing field, and those are things that are built on this initial relationship to your own life. So you had these base things that kind of brought you into this experience, and then these new characters come up, and that's when you really get into this movie or really get into this book or this course, is you're going, oh my gosh, that's how that relates to that, which I never even thought could be a thing. So this episode 5, is really where that started for me. A lot of the concepts that he had brought up in the first 4 episodes were brought to life in a way that feels very applicable to me. Those first 4 episodes had felt to me like big time groundwork, and then this one was like, whatcha! Here's some real potential of what all of those ideas at the beginning can bring you to. So yeah, this one was all about the mind and freeing the mind and the parts of the mind. Really fascinating because he talks about the mind from a few different enlightened beings' perspectives, and just gives you more of an idea of like what it might mean to be enlightened, which is really interesting to listen to, hearing an enlightened person talk about other enlightened people, because it gives you more of an understanding about the whole concept of enlightenment. Yeah, you should invest in this if you're interested in Sadhguru. You should invest in it when you're ready for it, though. Like, I was going to take this class 2 years ago, actually, and all these things came up for that I couldn't. Like, I was literally going, like, on the page to purchase it, and then there was just some complications with the purchasing process. It's really interesting because things like that, you know, we often think that they just kind of, like, happen. You're like, oh, I just can't do that right now. It's not working out. This is bumming me out. But then when you actually come to the thing later in life, and it comes much more naturally, like right now when I have this extra time that I can do this, I am blown away by the things I wouldn't have even understood 2 weeks ago, because I've been reading books on the side that have been talking about similar concepts, and then being able to combine all these different concepts really is making this a like crazy experience for me. So yeah, that's just a thing to say, like, look, if now's not the time, it's not the time, but well worth the investment when it is the time. Anyway, on to episode 6.
Sangarato va Sangavihinaha.
Well, the hair's looking good this morning, isn't it? So I just finished up number 6 of 7. It was all about the sound of creation and the whole idea of mantras and what they are. And to me, that's like, I mean, I'm really into music and stuff like that too, and the idea of vibrational healing. So it's really fascinating to see that there's just this ancient practice that has been doing exactly that. But what I like about Sadhguru too is that he takes those ideas more seriously than I think a lot of people. Like he'll say, look, if you're using these sounds wrong, it can be very dangerous. And I think especially in the West, it's all about just seems that spiritual process has become a lot about just getting paid and just having people kind of like sell you enlightenment. And when they do that, I think they're not moving at a pace that is like, even if that person has really good spiritual insights, I think they're moving at a pace that isn't necessarily healthy for the individual. Like, I think we're so bad at trying to master basics and understand that you need this platform before you're going to at all be able to move up, which I think Sadhguru just does a really good job of. So I really respect that. So, yeah, I'll see you after the last one.
Yasya Brahmani Ramate Chitta.
Final session of inner engineering all done. And let's just say one of the best hype up speeches of all time. It's pretty much an episode all about reflecting and how we can live moving forward. And just beautiful. Just beautiful. I'm not going to say more. That's all I have to say. Yeah. Much love.
Nandati Nandati Nandateva.
So it is now time to reflect on where and how I've changed over the last 6 months. Sadhguru says that inner engineering online is kind of the initiation of a very subtle form of transformation, and I could not describe it any better. I cannot say that throughout this time I've had any big like, whoa, enlightenment type situations, but it kind of feels like, I don't know if any of you guys used to smoke weed or still smoke weed or take edibles, whatever, anything that has to do with weed or drinking alcohol, with all of these drugs, you know, when you first take it, it takes some time for it to kick in. So there's kind of this like come up phase is what they call it with weed while you're getting high, you know? This may be a bad example, but it almost feels like the last 6 months of my life have been a very subtle come up. It's like every day there's just kind of this like, something's different right now. And the only way that I feel like I can really describe it is just a sensitivity towards life. Like, whether it will be my legitimate senses or my experiences dreaming or my experiences in meditation, whatever it is, it's as if all of these things that I'm doing are just going a little bit deeper than normal and a little bit deeper than normal, and they're all kind of building, and I don't know what they're building to, and I don't care what they're building to because it just feels really good. Yeah. More tangibly, I would say I have become a lot more peaceful. I'll find myself, rather than trying to just do the next thing, whatever, keep going, sleep, it's like my day almost feels like, hey, I have something to do, but I also see this 10-minute window where normally I would be on my phone scrolling or something, and instead I just choose to kind of sit down. You know, when I eat food now, I don't really like to do anything else because the experience of just being there with that food has deepened to a point where it's like, if I'm doing anything else at the same time, it doesn't give me as much. It's not as profound. And realizing that every meal can be a profound experience is something that I would have laughed at like a year ago. Not that all that has happened just in the 6 months, but in the 6 months have been probably the largest bounds in that direction. I have been using a few of the meditative practices from Inner Engineering online. There's one kind of chanting practice that I do pretty much every morning. And what that has really done is made me focus a lot more on what's going on inside of me. It feels like now, rather than just living an external life, it's like I am seeing the external and beginning to not understand. I don't understand any of this. Beginning to realize that there is so much going on internally that is reflecting the external in some ways, but also completely changing how I am experiencing the external. And the more that I kind of sit into that feeling, it feels like there are just these slight come up things that are like slowly, it's like these little doors are being opened. And it's like, oh, this is kind of a little thing that's hurting right now that I never would have noticed before. And then when I really breathe into that for some time, there's a level of relaxation that I wasn't able to get myself to before this 6-month period. I think another huge thing that has developed in me is how I'm just approaching spirituality and teachers and everyday life. And it's really that idea of full responsibility. You know, it feels like life right now, especially in the phase I'm in where I'm transitioning out of college, is really coming at me hard because I'm like, dang, it is now in my power to choose exactly how I live every day of my life. And I need to make sure that I have food, shelter, all those things. And I need to make sure that my relationships are going well, all these things. And those were all things that I was like kind of doing in the past, but it feels like all of them just really have shown how much control I have over them, which is not like control over them, like I can make exactly what happened the way I want it to happen, but that I am fully in control of myself, or learning to become fully in control of myself, which means a complete new level of responsibility in things like arguments with someone, like getting out something that you have wanted to say for a long time. My approach to it now has changed a lot because it's a lot subtler, it seems. Like the way that I'm experiencing it is just on this, it's like a perception thing that you can't really put into words. It's simply that the level of your perception has become more subtle, more attuned. So now when I'm doing things, I do it more in a way that leads to, you know, a peaceful, joyous result rather than doing it in a very compulsive way. It's Sadhguru's biggest lesson, going from compulsion to consciousness. And I am still far away from consciousness. Maybe I'm just one thought away from consciousness. Ram Dass quote. Maybe you'll hear that one in some reactions. But it seems like there's still so much growth I need to do. But this come up, it feels generally like it's going in this direction towards consciousness, and that has been just a beautiful flowering. I also just realized that when you take Inner Engineering online, you also get access to the treasure trove, which is just a bunch of questions, like frequently asked questions to Sadhguru that he answers in video form. And I haven't watched any of those, but there's like 2 hours of content just sitting there to watch. So that's something that I just watched the first video from, and I was like, this is some stuff I haven't really heard Sadhguru directly talk about. So that's going to be really exciting to dive into, another potential perk of why you would invest. So if you are someone who is thinking about doing inner engineering online like I was, and I was searching for videos that would maybe give me more clue about what it was going to be like, here is my advice. If you are someone who hears Sadhguru speak, watches him, whatever, and you have a curiosity that goes beyond like, oh, this is just something fun to listen to, then I would suggest taking this course. If it's something where you're like, I want to try really investing myself in something without having to, give away your life spendings because it's whatever, $150. I got it on like a COVID half off deal when it was like $70. But this course, as with everything else in life, is only going to give you what you give to it. I think that as these 6 months have progressed, I have been constantly going back to the learnings from this course, and every morning I even remind myself of the 3 things that he says to remind yourself of every morning at the end of the course. I literally every day am going back to the course at the beginning of my day, and I think that is what has made any sort of sensitivity really take off. So I think if you are someone who is willing to invest that, then this will be well worth your while. If you are not in a space for that right now, or you have other ways of getting to those sorts of investments of yourself, then no need to do it right now. Maybe it will come back around later. But I think the biggest teaching that I've been learning recently is that no one thing is just going to get you there. Like all of these gurus, speakers, whoever who are talking about spirituality, the only way that it's going to start happening for you is when you dive into your own experience. So that is the most important thing, and I think you can get to the places that this course gives you without Sadhguru, but I do think that if you are interested and have the time and money to put into this, then I think it will give you a boost in a direction that can be very helpful. It kind of goes back to the Zen saying of the master talking to his disciple, points to the moon and says, "Don't mistake my finger for the moon." And it's just kind of a parable about the fact that teachers are pointing at something. They are not the something. They cannot just give you the something, and if you're focused on their hand, their words, you're never actually going to see the moon. Sadhguru is the same way. If you're just looking at him and like thinking he's the thing, he's not. You have to become the thing. That's a beautiful teaching and something that Sadhguru is very open about. So I just want to also lay my 2 cents in right there and say that that's the truth of what I've experienced. But yeah, I'm thrilled that you guys hung out. I hope that you got a lot out of this video. If you have any other things that you would like us to talk about, any videos that you would like us to react to, you can toss them in the description below. And you know how it is. Much love.